Hi, and welcome to Rich's Kitchen. This is the first episode of a new cooking show on NC Media. I hope to share some kitchen tips, cooking recipes that you'll really enjoy at home, and share part of who I am with you and my cooking experience. I've cooked semi-professionally in a few kitchens, but I'm mostly a home cook, but I love to cook. And I've been cooking, I think my first cookbook came to me when I was 10 years old, and I asked for it myself. Since then, I've been cooking real regularly, and it's something that I just derive so much pleasure and joy from, and I hope you do too. It's part of sharing the love. You cook for people and you're sharing your love. My parents both cooked, my brother cooks, I've got two sons, they both cook, both adults, and I've just passed along this love of cooking. And I hope this is something that you see in all the shows, and know that you too can prepare any of the stuff we're doing. We will be providing ingredient lists and tool lists for all the recipes. I became a vegetarian when I was about 18, but not all the recipes will be vegetarian necessarily. I do eat mostly pretty healthy lifestyle, but I also like flavor. So lots of butter, certain cheeses and things, really embrace. So there'll be a mix of both healthy things and things that are just made to just enjoy and savor on our taste buds. I got involved in juicing and fasting and a very healthy, strict lifestyle many years ago. And the main reason I stopped doing that is I just missed cooking. There was just so much of the food preparation that I enjoyed. Today's recipe is going to be polenta with goat cheese, sauteed vegetables, which will be asparagus and mushrooms and onions and garlic, and we'll top that with a fried egg. And with that yolk running down over the vegetables and the polenta, it's quite a tasty dish. I'm going to get the polenta started first, so that takes a little bit longer to cook. And polenta for a lot of people has been something they sort of avoid. There's all these rules about you have to keep stirring it constantly. There's some pre-made rolls that you can buy now at the grocery store. Not nearly as much flavor as the fresh powdered stuff. And it really has been perfected a lot more, and all the modern polentas you can really not have to watch constantly like it always says. Polenta, this is the brand I prefer. This is Golden Pheasant. Most every grocery store carries it. And you work a 4-to-1 ratio with the polenta, water to polenta. And I've just put 2 cups of water in the pot. I'm going to add a half a cup of polenta. And once this starts boiling, I'll add it in. The next step is going to be sauteing the vegetables. Again, I'm a butter user. I like olive oil and butter much of the time. And we'll start off with 2 of my favorite things to start any meal with, garlic and onion. Many of you have probably seen garlic being smashed like this. And it's really the easiest, simplest way to take the skin off the garlic and prepare it for chopping and dicing. I'm going to use 2 cloves. And a fairly fine dice. You can do this. I know there are little devices that people own that actually help chop garlic. I have a couple of those at home, but there's something about the act of actually just chopping it, bringing the smell out. There's something about the smell of garlic and onion sauteing. Michael Ferrante has a song. Refers to the fact that there's nothing sexier to smell on the stove than garlic and onion. So, have to agree. I'm going to use about 1/3 of an onion. And I'm putting that in with the garlic. I know there's all kinds of chopping devices and things out there, and I've always really preferred the hands-on chopping and not using any of the mechanized devices for chopping. So we'll start that sauteing. And our water is almost boiling for the polenta. We'll be adding some salt to the water for the polenta. And about 2 tablespoons of more butter. As I'm waiting for the garlic and the onion to start sauteing, I'll start cutting up the mushrooms. Mushrooms, a lot of people will take it home and they will wash. And it's really a problem for the mushrooms much of the time, because they're mostly water. I always recommend just taking the caps, the stems off the mushrooms, and I use a mushroom brush. You can buy any of these at any good cooking store in town. Grocery stores might even carry it. And the idea is mushrooms are mostly water. And if you start washing them, it basically is diluting the flavor. And mushrooms basically are all organic anyway. They're growing in dirt and manure most of the time. And they are kept very sterile. So there really isn't much of an issue with doing anything other than just brushing the basic soil, any of the soil you see off of the mushrooms. So just pulling the stems off, using the mushroom brush. This will probably be enough. Okay, my water is boiling now for my polenta, and I want to pour the polenta in really slowly. It can be lumpy, and so this is a nice way of making sure it stays very smooth. And just a really slow and it looks real watery at this point. Polenta will thicken up just fine, and towards the end I'll be adding some herb and garlic goat cheese. So I'll watch this a little bit just to make sure it's not a real fast boil. And I can use this, I'm going to use a different stirring spoon for my mushrooms and my onions and my vegetables. At this stage, it's really nice to be able to add some salt and some pepper to your sauteed vegetables. And I'll put salt and pepper in a couple different times, and it's called layering. And you want to layer the flavors a few different times with some herbs and spices, depending on what you're cooking. But if you put them in all at once, at the beginning or at the end, much of the time they can be watered down. And if you put them in at different stages, they will always end up a lot more flavorful. I'll give the polenta another stir. And you can see some of the water is already dissipating. So I've cleaned my mushrooms and I have taken the stems off. And using a chef's knife, just doing some slices. Not real small pieces. It's nice to have the mushroom look like a mushroom still when you're eating it. Oh, I think we'll add a couple more mushrooms in here. It looks like it could use a few more. Set those to the side. Not quite ready to add in here. There's a few different ways to cut up a red bell pepper, and one of the easiest, simplest is actually one of the cleanest ways too. You cut off the top and the bottom, make a small slit, and you just open up the bell pepper. And you end up with almost all usable bell pepper in one big strip like this. Makes it a little bit easier to handle. I like taking out some of the white center of the bell peppers. They can be a little bitter sometimes. And as sweet as these red bells have been lately, it's nice to make sure you're getting all that sweet flavor. Give this a stir. So the polenta is not nearly as sensitive as it used to be in the days where you really had to almost stand over the stove the entire time. I'm going to put in the whole red bell pepper and just cut it into strips. It's nice to see that red color. So much about cooking is also about the visual effect, and how you prepare it is important, but certainly how you present it is important too. This dish will have vegetables and fried egg and hopefully a lovely running yolk over the whole top. So the onions and the garlic are now getting sauteed, so I will add the red bell pepper next. And again, keeping an eye on the polenta. I don't think that the microphone picks up the sound, but the polenta is doing this lovely bubbling sound. And it's sort of your hint to know that it is thickening and the water is dissipating. Besides the onion, mushroom, red bell pepper, I'll be putting asparagus and spinach inside with the vegetables. Now, asparagus is another thing. Again, this is a great time of year for asparagus. It's the time of year. And again, a lot of times people will just they know they're supposed to cut off a couple inches off the bottom, and you can often cut off too much. The easiest way to know exactly how much to cut off the end of your asparagus is to just break it. And it will break exactly where it's tender and exactly where it's too fibery to eat. I can hear my vegetables and everything sauteing really nicely now. Heat's come up. I'm going to turn down the polenta now. So continue with the asparagus, and all you do is just break it. And you will always end up with exactly the parts that's not supposed to be on there that's too fibery, and you'll always end up with nice tender asparagus in your dish. This very thin asparagus will cook very quickly. It'll be the last part that I put in. The mushrooms go next. And we'll incorporate those and mix those in. And someday they'll invent smell-o-vision. You will smell garlic and onion and mushroom and red bell peppers cooking, and it's wonderful in here. This is a good stage to add a little salt and pepper, a little bit more. Then again, the mushrooms are at a stage where they're really absorbing a lot, but just a little bit. You really don't need much of the salt. The Parmesan cheese I'll be putting on the end provides a certain amount of salt also, and you don't want it too salty. You can always add more. A lot of times cooks will add in a little bit too much salt, and it's pretty hard to get rid of the flavor of too much salt. As a hint, or if you are making a soup and you have too much salt, put a potato in there, and the potato will absorb much of the salt, and it will take away some of that excess salty flavor. Okay, our polenta is coming along really nicely. as is our mixed vegetables. Almost time for the asparagus. Put this on the way. I'm going to put in a goat cheese in the polenta that has both a little bit of herb and a little bit of garlic in it. It just adds that much more flavor. Another thing you can do with polenta, I use water to cook it. You can make it with stock. You can make polenta with vegetable stock or with beef or chicken stock, and it adds a whole lot of flavor to the polenta. I wanted to do this as is, but if you've got stock around, especially if you've got stock and they come in these quart containers that are actually pretty good stock these days, and I often will end up with an extra cup, and I'm never sure what to do with that extra cup. It goes in the refrigerator, and I end up not using it. Make polenta with your stock, and you'll end up with polenta that you have so much more flavor. All right, I'm going to add the asparagus now, and just little 1-inch pieces, 1/2 inch to 1-inch pieces. This will cook very quickly. As will the spinach that I'm adding in next. The red, the green, just beautiful colors here. The polenta is beginning to thicken some, so I will turn it up just a little bit more before I add more goat cheese. Now I'm going to be cooking the eggs in the same pan that the vegetables are in, so I will just wipe that out and use that. It's nice not to have 3, 4, 5 pans all to use all at once and have a little less cleanup. I'm going to grab spinach, one of these mystery vegetables that no matter how much you put in a saute, it shrinks to about 2% of what you thought you put in. I brought in more than I know I need, but in general, you want to grab a pretty healthy handful of spinach. And again, it shrink those $5 1-pound clamshells of spinach are barely a bottomful in a saute pan. Just cutting it up just a little bit. This will melt down really nice and really small, but it's nice if there aren't any really big lengthy pieces in the pan. And we'll just want to get the spinach wilted just to the point where it's settling into all the other vegetables. It is time for the goat cheese. I'm going to use about 3 ounces of goat cheese for this portion. And you can always add more. I'll taste the polenta before I serve it, and just to make sure it's got enough of the goat cheese in there. But it melts in there really nice and just adds a richness to the polenta that wouldn't be there otherwise. Nice. Give our vegetables another stir. And this just needs to sit and cook for a few minutes and not get messed with a whole lot. I just used butter today, but I often will use butter and olive oil together. It actually allows you to cook at a little higher heat since they work together and don't burn as quickly as they do together. I'm going to go ahead and crack my eggs, and we're going to do a couple eggs on top of the vegetables and the polenta. There we Good. This is a dish that works just as well as a breakfast dish because of the egg and for dinner. We certainly make this ourselves as a dinner dish, just as much as I would for a breakfast. You can change up the vegetables. If you want meat, you can certainly incorporate meat into the dish. Bacon is often added as a sprinkling into polenta. This is coming along lovely, as is this. Set that aside for now. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of the Parmesan cheese that will go on top of everything into the polenta also. It'll work as a salt and as a bit of a thickener. We're hoping to be able to add in an email address that you'll be able to contact me if you have any questions about any of the recipes, or even if you have a particular recipe or a particular dish that you want to know about, how to prepare. I'm certainly open to any and all questions that you might provide. And we are almost ready to pull the vegetables out and cook the eggs. Sort of Christmassy looking. It's red and green, the red bells and the spinach, the asparagus. And I'm going to do one more layering of a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. Since we're only using 2 burners here in the NC Media Kitchen, I'm going to take the vegetables out of this pan and then cook the eggs in the same pan. And we're going to let this cool off. So you can see the lovely colors and combinations of everything that's sitting here. I'll put this out here, you can see. And we'll add more butter for the eggs. And a couple of bowls for serving. Don't skip on the butter. There we go. Since these will only take a couple minutes to cook, I will go ahead and start dishing up the polenta and the vegetables. And by the time those are dished up, these eggs should be ready to put on top. It's always nice to have a little bit of garnish on dishes. I like Italian parsley over the curly parsley. It's just so much more flavor. And the easiest way is just lightly take your knife, grab it by the bottom, and just loosely, barely touching, trim off some of the leaves. It's easier than doing it with your hands. You pull off a few stems, you can pull this off by hand. shot. So yeah, even garnish at home. You know, if you're trying to prepare food for yourself at home, think about what's pleasing to you when you're in a restaurant and you see how well things are prepared, or if it's got a little extra special look to it. There's no reason why you can't enjoy that yourself in your own home. And your family, your loved ones will comment and appreciate the fact that you've made a little more effort in having it actually look good. Okay. So the bottom layer is the polenta with butter and goat cheese. You can see a little stringiness from the Parmesan. And then you want to add a little bit of Parmesan in between the vegetables and the polenta. Our eggs are taking a little bit longer to cook. And we'll layer our sauteed vegetables on top. A little more polenta, a little more Parmesan. And we will wait just another minute for the eggs to finish up. As you can see, timing is everything. This. And we can put these two out here. Trying to be as gentle as possible with that yolk. Usually just takes about 30 seconds or a minute when it's flipped for a fried egg to be ready. Right on top. And amongst the loveliest things to do is to just pierce that yolk so it has a chance to run out on top of everything else. A little extra garnish. And there you have polenta with goat cheese, sauteed asparagus with mushrooms, spinach, onions, and garlic, a fried egg, goat cheese, and Parmesan cheese. Welcome to Rich's Kitchen. Ready to eat?